Hello, Alexandra. Welcome to the Feminine Frequency Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I feel very inspired about the conversation that we're about to have and to really dive into your genius and your most recent creation, your book, Fuck Like a Goddess, which I can't wait to get into. So, yeah, welcoming all our listeners today and wanting to start by hearing more about what this message of fuck like a goddess means and kind of like where that inspiration came from for you.
Awesome. So the title Fuck Like a Goddess has multiple meanings. It's like a multi-layered title. So of course, at first glance, at first read, you're probably like, fuck like a goddess. That means like have sex like a super sexy, like divine feminine being. And sure, that can be one part of it, but I'm a bit more like nuanced and poetic about things. And, even the word fuck, I go into its meaning in the first chapter of the book. And the word didn't exist always as a swear word, right? All of the words that we now call swear words are just words that humans put a certain energetic behind, right? And like spelling is like casting a spell, and that's why we call it spelling. And so the word, any word that we put a particular energetic behind over time has a power, right? And so that's where we as humans essentially believe in magic, right? We believe in magic. We can take a word like fuck that like had its roots in the word breed, and we can put a bunch of energy behind it, right? Human energy behind it, and then the word is transformed into something that has an energetic value that can shock or titillate or awaken others. And that's something that's so powerful about language. And, like um how a word can really inspire, can hurt, can change a room, a moment, anything. um and I like the word fuck because it comes from this etymology of breed. And to me, it's like two things coming together to create a third. um and so in this regard, and I go into it, it's like fucking like a goddess is letting life make love to you and being in this symbiotic union with life. And so you're making love to life and you're letting life enter you fully. You're not holding it back. You're yeah, really letting it enter you. And I'm not the only person to use the word fuck with an exalted flavor or sacred flavor. Many have, so I'm just one of the many who can see the sacredness in like a word that is like has a clap or like a slash to it, and so at the top of the book I go into this idea of, you know, what is it like to walk through life like you're making love to life? Like that to me is being in union with, right? Like, so you could look at it on the purely physical level, being in union with another body, and that's where our mind goes, like on the physical level. But if we look at it where we're tapping into, the astral plane or the causal plane or other planes of existence or metaphor, poetry, then we can go, oh, what am I coming into union with? What am I fucking? What's fucking me? And allowing the sort of profanity of that word to also permeate the fields of your being, knowing then that, well, the sacred and the profane are intertwined, that actually, if this dimension, this world we live in is all created by source energy, consciousness, then there's nothing about it that is not in some sort of um, flow of transformation, of being. And so even the things that are painful and profane and shocking are somehow in relation to the sacred. And so the word goddess I chose, but I say in the first chapter, you can substitute that for anything. You can fuck like a butterfly. You can fuck like a light beam, but something that is also a nod to an alternative view of source energy, of
Mm.
divine energy, right? I chose the feminine one because that's part of my own journey of that. But it's like, well, if I've been taught that God is like the principle of God is this kind of masculine, grandfathery kind of figure, then what would be the sort of expanded or exalted view of that goddess, or nature, or whatever you want to say, right? So the subheader of the book is heal yourself, reclaim your voice, stand in your power. So it's like fuck like a goddess is to, in a sense, heal yourself, reclaim your voice, and stand in your power. And those are much more kind of linear deliveries of words, which I think have an appeal to people. And it's simple in the sense of like, heal yourself. Okay, I can understand. Would it reclaim your voice? And so within, sorry, there's a big truck going by. Let me just wait for it to go by. So within even those subheaders, they're kind of like buckets in a sense, where a lot can be held in the heal yourself, a lot can be held in the reclaim your voice. And again, on multiple levels, on like a physical level, a practical level, a metaphysical level, an energetic level, an emotional level. So I like to just presence that for the title, that like I had a fear as a writer, being like, well, are people going to take this at face value, like just super literalist? As Western humans, we are quite literal. We don't always have a lot of nuance in the way that we communicate. But I'm an artist, and so I like to have a little poke, and I like to be cheeky, and I like to have a little bit more nuance of like, wait, what does she mean by that? So, definitely I got at least just one review on Amazon that's like, this book isn't about fucking, but the only one. So other people, I think, understood the more deeper metaphor there.
Yeah, amazing. If anything, it stops you to think. And I believe that books have energy the same way that you talked about words carry energy. And when I'm reading a book, I'm actually feeling the energy of the author and their infusion into it. And so I love this intentionality, even of the creation of the title, the boldness that takes to get out of the social construct of what is considered, you know, normal, or what is considered safe and okay. The fact that you've really evolved on your journey to be like, yeah, I'm actually going to name my book that, and that's what it's called, I think is such a statement in itself. So thank you for your boldness, and
Mhm.
I loved that description. I'm curious to know, and for you to describe the alternative to living life, letting life, being in union with
Mm.
life. What
Yeah.
does that feel like for someone when they are not in union with life, when they are not open to being in relationship to love in that way?
Mm. So that's a great question. When we are not in cahoots with life, and we're not letting life tickle us and like slap us around a little, it usually looks like control, and it usually looks like stiffness, and it looks like a lot of plans, and it looks like a lot of rigidity. We can see this in humans' desire to control nature. And it's like, even people, corporations can cut down all the trees, they can sell animals, they can sell food, they can sell, everything from nature. But then an earthquake can come anytime. And it does. And a tsunami can come anytime, and it does. And that's like the same thing. It's like you can go, okay, I'm going to plan my life, and this is what it's going to be. This is my identity. This is who I am. This is what I want. Here are my dreams. I'm going to manifest this and this and this, and it's all going to be great. And then guess what? Someone gets cancer, or guess what? Like someone dumps you, and if you're so attached to the rigidity of the plans and the way things are supposed to look for you, then you're going to likely like think about a branch, right? Like that's like dry and hard, and it's like that compared to a branch that's still connected to a tree that can move with the wind and isn't going to snap, right? So the branch that's connected to the tree versus a twig that is cut off from its source, if you pick it up and you bend it in half, it will snap because it's no longer in that connection to source. It doesn't have that flexibility. It's not working in union with the whole. It's on its own like that. And the same is like, you can watch a beautiful tree in a storm be blown like crazy and not fall because it's just letting itself be blown, right? And so
Mm.
there's there are places in humanity where we are right now. We really have developed so many systems and structures and products and things to control nature, to control life, to control sleep, to control light, to control time, to control the way we go to the bathroom, to control the way we bleed, like to control the way our breath smells or doesn't smell, to control like everything,
Mm.
and if you're fighting the flow of existence and being, then you could spend your whole life just stuck in that and actually not really be experiencing your incarnation, what you've come to earth to feel, because you've spent all this time trying to not feel that or not look like that, or you know all of this stuff. So someone who hasn't said, all right, life, you want to give me a little slap in the face? You want to, like, kind of dance with me? You want to tease me a little? Let's do it. I'm not going to try to control you as much. I'm going to try to flow with you. Someone who is still scared of that, bless your heart. I get it. I'm scared like that all the time too. But, there's a closedness. It really comes down to open or closed. It's like, are you open or closed to life? If someone is going to smile at you in the street and say hello, are you open or closed? If someone invites you to a party, are you open or closed? If someone says, hey, do you want to write for my blog? Are you open or closed? It's like we have these moments all day where we choose either to open to life or to close to life.
Mm. Yeah. So I was feeling when you were talking about that rigidity and that control, I was feeling very much that constriction, which is the closedness, right?
Yeah.
And the opposite is that expansion, that openness. And you recently wrote a post and I believe a newsletter around staying open to love in relationships. When we have those triggers, when we have those moments when it feels like maybe we're letting too much love in and we're afraid to let it in, we sabotage. Or I'd love to talk more about this concept because I think it's so important, because those triggers are going to come up, the pain will come up, the challenges will come up. And it's this practice that you're talking about of staying open, especially when we want to close, right? So the natural tendency is to protect and to stay closed. So I'd love to hear more about this idea of what does that look like either in the moment, or what are some ways that we can practice to stay open in our relationships to others and to life.
Yeah. So another really great and important question, I think, for all of us to remember to keep asking ourselves and answering for ourselves. And the first way, the most universal way that kind of exists across all creation and across nature and across our birth is remembering breath. And the moment we come out of the womb and we arrive here, the first thing we do is take a breath, and the last thing we do is take a breath before we go. And the breath connects us to the moment, and if we hold our breath, then we immediately are able to sort of disconnect from the body and to sort of zone out from the experience of being present. And so the breath anchors us back in the physical body where our feelings are, especially where our uncomfortable feelings are. And that's why it's the first thing to go, usually in moments of conflict, right? You see people go, and kind of get tension, right? They kind of become rigid, like you go, right? That even is like a trope you would see in a movie, right? Something happens and somebody goes, and
Hmm.
then their breath and they kind of freeze, you know? And it's like in moments of conflict, if we can just keep breathing, keep our belly soft, keep our face soft, not tighten our jaw. Those are like always the fundamentals that I see, especially in women and the women I work with and clients and in myself, that we hold a lot of tightness, closure, rigidity, where we shy away from feeling and where we shy away from loving and where we shy away from receiving is where we have to look at the places in our lives where we're tight, where we are rigid, you know, and this can be around money. This can be around your body. This can be around organization in the home. It's like wherever we see our cute little neuroses of rigidity and tightness, it's the same place essentially that we're losing breath there. We've lost breath there. We've lost spaciousness there. And sometimes that comes from, you know, some sort of a former trauma, or sometimes we don't know where it came from. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we cultivate the awareness to notice it. Oh, like this, I get really tight when, you know, my partner doesn't do the dishes. Like I see the dishes in the sink. Immediately I feel a tightness in my belly. I start to tense and hold. I clench my jaw for a second, and then I turn to him to go, "Hey, I thought you were going to do the dishes," right? And so in that moment, my neuroses is where I don't breathe, where I don't create space in my being is shown, right? Where I'm holding control or so it's like those moments where where we want to tense and close that's kind of a silly one in a way, but in those moments where we want to tense and close are the moments where literally if we bring the breath back in, wow, I see the dishes in the sink and I want to go, right? And it doesn't mean we can't do that, but me going with a tight mouth and no breath, there's no sound there. It's going to be like look like I'm making some sort of a constipated face. But if I see those dishes in the sink and I stay with my breath and I can go, oh God, yeah. I don't even have to say anything. And then I may start laughing because I just realized how ridiculous that it was that I was about to sort of get my panties in such a wad, you know? And maybe the breath doesn't have a sound, you know? But any place in our lives where we can notice that's like the first thing we notice, that we've cut off the breath. We stop feeling our bodies. And that's just also so much as like around the past, right? Like, okay, what other moments is this replicating from the past where I didn't feel safe and da 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 da. And I don't want to get into too much therapizing of it because I'm not a therapist. I'm a practitioner and I work with the body in the moment and that kind of thing. But, you know, you can go into all sorts of, you know, therapeutic spirals around all those moments. But if we look at it from a stance of spiritual practice and embodiment, it's come back, breathe, and feel. That's it. We don't go into the story. We don't go, oh, this is because mom and dad and d. You know, if you've never done that, go do that for sure. But like in the moment, it's just breathe, feel, and that's it. And I always say breathe, feel, and express. But if you're a new practitioner, express may be too vague for you because it's by express, I don't mean say, I don't like that you didn't do the dishes. It's more of like expressing through sound or going, but breathe and feel for everybody, you know, like breathe and feel in those moments. And if you can kind of keep that mantra going when you want to stop breathing and stop feeling.
Yeah, I'm so loving this transition from the overly analyzing realm of personal development and therapy into bringing somatic embodiment and feeling and processing and moving energy and emotions. Not to say that those other modalities are not valuable, because clearly I've had, huge transformation in my world and been able to, as a mindset coach, been able to support women in really changing their mindset and creating new belief systems. And the work that I'm moving into, that I know that you really, is a big part of your work, is this embodiment piece, is bringing it into the body, is breathing, is slowing down. And I love that piece of express, because I think one of the biggest fears that I see from a lot of women is being afraid to be judged. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this piece around expression, whether it's expressing your voice, expressing your ideas, expressing how you feel, expressing a noise, like it just, it is this fear of, what are other people going to think if I actually let what's inside of me out?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you can do that in so many different ways. You can do it through dance, you can do it through journaling, you can do it through just sound, you can do it through writing poetry, like you can do it through painting, like that, the options are endless, and not just through like actual like literal arts, but um I found that the simple just sounding is like using the base again of like when we were born, we breathed, right? That first breath, and then we made a sound. Blah! you know? And it's like the primordial elements of being, right? And my practices where I lead women, I'm like, okay, we're just using these primordial elements, breath, sound, and movement. We're going back to them, back to the basics. And these ways of feeling and healing and moving energy and emotions are just the way that we came into this world, but yet we forgot to breathe. We don't do it all the time, and we don't do it well. And I've helped so many women to like learn how to breathe properly again and deeply. We don't know how to sound. I've had women in my workshops that I'm saying like, go like this, ha, and they can't do it.
Mm.
Like there's, and then I'm leading, practice, and I'm just saying move your hips just a little, and people can't do it, and it's like the just these primordial elements of our humanness, they do unlock something, just like, oh right, I can just go, ugh.
Mhm.
It sounds, kind of silly. And I did go to my background first and foremost is as an artist and an actor and a writer, director, and a performer. And so my embodiment training goes back to the theater, and it goes back to being in rooms with people just blah, 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 and like moving our bodies like amoebas, and like freeing our voices and finding our spine where we've been holding ourselves in a way of low confidence, and finding a voice that actually resonates deeply. And like these are just some of the basics where, especially as women, where we have to sort of shed these common sort of imbibed ways of moving and speaking and expressing.
Mhm. All
Yeah,
for the sake of looking good and being accepted, and feeling that our ego and our primal brain feels safe, right?
exactly.
Because if
Yeah, yeah.
we do depart from that, or if we do something different that doesn't look sexy or cool or attractive, then what are other people going to think?
Exactly. And on a survival level, are they going to throw us out from the pack and, throw stones at us and say, you freak, you're standing up straight and breathing deep and like feeling your feelings, like what's wrong with you? And essentially a lot of that has happened throughout time. People just praying the way they want to pray. Wars have been started over that, people dancing, singing, practicing their spiritual practices or religions. Like so much bloodshed has happened. So it's encoded in our DNA.
Mhm.
It's coming from our ancestors and our ancestry and our perhaps, past lives, or just in our, DNA, um, deeply embedded is like survival.
Mhm.
And I think, there's a teacher that I love, Richard Rudd, who created the Gene Keys. And, there's this concept he talks about that we go from survival to service to surrender. And it's such a beautiful concept of like, once we learn to get out of survival in our own personal evolution, then we can go, oh, I want to be of service. Right. So then we're trying really hard to help and like to do good and like to do the things. And then eventually there's this peaceful surrender. into what is, in a sense. I'm definitely not that at that phase, but I get
Mm,
it. You get it when you see someone who embodies a quality of peace. Like they're not striving, they're not pushing, their being is a gift in a way.
mm. Yeah, I think that's the ever evolving work that we're here as light workers, as leaders, is to really get to that place. And in the meantime, impact and support as many other souls to rise and awaken along the way with what we know. So here we are
Yeah.
in this conversation, doing the thing. So
Yeah.
yeah. I know that one of the things that women have also felt very suppressed with in our lineage and ancestrally is around sexual power. Women's sexuality has been, suppressed and demonized for a really long time. And I know that in your book you talk about reclaiming your sexual power. So I'd love to hear your perspective on what that journey is for a woman and how we go about that exactly, like reclaiming the sexual power that has been stuffed down and suppressed by us and society.
Yeah. It's interesting to use the word sexual power because at its heart, it's just our sexual nature. And I think that, power can be a dirty word because it's like it has this kind of third chakra, like exalted state of like cleaned and cleared and purified. And then power also has its real shadow state of, needing power. So I like to return to first us reclaiming our sexual nature, just the way we were born, like not even looking at it as something that is a special power, but that just is. So the fact that our bodies can bleed, or many of us have wombs, our bodies bleed every month, and that there is a correlation to emotional states and spiritual states, and that, or we can have all different types of orgasms, and all of those come with all sorts of different sounds and states and spiritual openings and emotional healings. And so there's something in the pure nature of the feminine body that is itself it is sexual. It has we have sexual nature, we men and women and everyone, um and that within that there are ways that we can heal ourselves. You could call that a power, or you could just call it our nature. There are ways we can heal ourselves. There are ways that we can potentially speak to the divine, hear the divine, listen. We can create another human. So we're in a direct co-creational relationship with life and that which cannot be named, when we are conceiving life. And so all of that is just our nature. But that nature is, again, I want to presence the word nature because it's the same uncontrollable force. And it's the same uncontrollable force that over time in history has been tried to be controlled, right? Like nature. Like, let's
Mhm.
control it. Let's like keep it tame. Let's keep it chill. Let's try to forecast it. When's it going to be freaking out? What's it going to do? How can we maintain it? And so the feminine sexual nature is as such. It's like, well, if we have a woman lay down while she's giving birth in a room with bright lights, and we give her, this thing and this thing, and then we can tame this experience, right? And it will create more safety for ourselves. And the same around, like, if we see in films the way people make love, they're under the sheets, they turn off a light, they make a few sounds, but it's usually pretty chill, right? Like we saw all the Hollywood films our whole lives, and this wild sexual nature of woman, you know widely portrayed in the media, the tamed and then the untamed, right? Which the untamed has its own kind of cultural and mythological baggage and languaging, right, of films where the woman who does have an untamed sexuality is a temptress, is a Jezebel, is an evil vamp, is a femme fatale, and
Mm.
so those kind of things, those beliefs, and have been perpetuated throughout time intentionally, I believe, to continue to tame this wild nature. So it's like if we can put a name on it, oh, a woman who's sexually free is a slut, is a whore, is a femme fatale. A woman who's enjoying sex is bad. So we'll call her that.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can continue to control that, right? Or the same in the way we menstruate. It's like, okay, if we can sell this thing that smells like flowers and it's little and it's white, and you stick it up in you, and then you take this pill, and then no one ever knows that it happened. You flush it,
Mm.
no one knows it happened. You still go to work and you smile and you perform, you're well for your duties. Um, and then again, we keep nature tamed because the woman who's bleeding, maybe who, didn't put in the little cute scented tampon and didn't take the Motrin or whatever, she's on the floor like bleeding and sobbing and oh, sounding, give me someone, please give me some support. And whatever. I mean, for me, I love to moan and groan and sound when if I'm having bad cramps, which maybe
Mm-hmm.
not all the time. But so if you could think about what would a world be like with untamed sexual nature, I mean, and with that has a shadow side as well. However, I don't know what it would be like if women's sex, if women were just kind of prowling around. I honestly don't really think that we would just be kind of humping at everything in sight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's part of the feminine sexual nature as much. And it's not like a compulsive thing in a way, but I could be wrong. Definitely not a scientist or a biologist or anything like that. But just to take it back to your question, I know I've kind of gone on a long tangent, but I want people to really feel what would life be like if we were just at our sexual nature, at the way it just comes, right? We're not enhancing it. We just bleed, we just cramp, we just have feelings. We have orgasms that have sounds, like none of this is stuff that we've put on or added. It's not like a superpower that we've had to cultivate. It's just our nature that's been taken away and tried, um, and been diminished and culled over time. So when I talk about my book Sexual Healing, it's like it's not getting us to a place where we're all walking around of like, oh my god, I'm so sexually empowered, da 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 da. It's like getting us to a place where we're in a peaceful acceptance and union with our bodies, with our sex, with our orgasms, with our blood, with our conception, with our birth. It doesn't mean that every woman's going to be the same at all. No way. Like some women might have a completely different experience of any of those things. I mean, we do. There's millions of different types of orgasms. There's millions of different sounds of ways to give birth, of ways to bleed. Different people have different tricks and ideas and all this stuff. And like that's part of the magic is that we are so different. And so for capitalism, media to go, okay, no, there's this one way you bleed, one way you fuck, one way you come. Like it's sort of like a huge cosmic joke that we can go, oh, actually cool. All right. So I'm gonna reclaim my sexual power, or we'll say nature, by simply coming back to what's true for me.
Mm.
And I say that to sometimes like women, I'm like, well, what does it sound like when you orgasm? Like, did you get that from a porn? Did you get that from a movie? Or is it like, really coming from the depths of your being, and try letting something out that sounds bestial and sounds guttural and sounds like, or that has sobbing and crying and moaning and groaning. See what happens, if you come like that or if you bleed like that. Um, and sometimes that in itself is just like, oh my God, but that's so disruptive. Oh my God, I'm going to be such a freak. If I'm at work and I'm like, oh, sorry, ow, I'm having such cramps. Ooh, like in a board meeting. And
Mhm.
it's like, well, no, that's just really like, feels like there's like knives being stabbed into my womb right now.
Mhm.
Right. Or
Which I
like,
know every woman here can relate. So,
no,
yeah.
I'm not saying that the extreme go around town moaning and groaning and shouting and, having your experiences all over the place. Like, obviously that's not the message here. It's like just coming into what is the authentic sexual expression of you, because sexual empowerment feels like some, cotton candy, like sort of like, oh, let's make it better. When it's like, no, it's not even that. It's just coming back to our true sexual nature. And so with that is like a healing, which is kind of a weaving back together of our deep selves with our deep nature. We're like, it's like coming back into union with, again, there's like this theme of the union. And healing isn't about fixing. It's like this weaving back together of a place that is ruptured, right? Us and
Mhm.
our nature of like, I bleed and it's okay, and I don't need to worry about it smelling funny, or I can allow myself to have cramps and cry. It's okay if I cry the first day a lot or the day before. And with that, you're coming back into union with something in your depths that's like, oh, thank God, I don't have to fight my nature anymore.
Mm.
And again, that's also relative to each woman.
Mhm. Yeah, so powerful. I really love this concept of more about the coming home than about trying to pull out and create this power,
Which
which
is very
feels like a lot.
phallic.
Yeah, it also feels like a very like feels like a lot more effort
It's
versus
masculine
like
feeling,
yeah. Hmm.
right? It's like going upward instead of descending back down and in.
Hmm.
Right? Like our vaginal canal and our cervix, it goes up and in. And
Hmm.
it's like we can look at that a lot with our feminine nature is like, and this is very much kind of correlates to some sorts of depth psychology. It's like when we come down and in, we descend into our being, into ourselves, right? Where it's like we're not erecting outward.
Hmm.
No, power, claiming my power.
Hmm. Yeah, the the shift is happening. I believe that,
Which my book says stand in your power, which I was like, that's super masculine, but that's fine. It's kind of the languaging that people are using. I'll get them in and then.
hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I had another guest on the show a few weeks ago, and her publishers like highly encouraged her to change the name of her book. And I really, really loved the initial name of her book. I thought it was like really bold, and it's still a beautiful book. And it's interesting to see how much it, this idea of it needing to be a certain way to be sellable or marketable, and like, at the core of the message is still the message. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad that they pushed me to change my title, and I just trusted my editor. She's amazing. And I really kicked and screamed about it because it wasn't exactly how I wanted it. And the
mhm.
same with the color of the book. And you've probably seen it. And I know this isn't a video.
I have it here.
Yay! But I was like, oh my God, I can't have a pink book. I was flipping out. I literally cried and cried about pink. But the book in itself is like a dark red, hot pink kind of combo. But I like had such an attack about like, oh my God, I'm perpetuating this idea about like women's self-help has to be a pink book. And if it's a red book, it's the sex book. And so I better have it be a pink book so people know it's self-help and not a sex book. And I was just like, fuck the system. This is exactly what I don't want to be a part of. But then I took a deep breath, again, trusted my editor. She's like, no, it's going to look dope. And it did. And it does. And it's super cool.
Yeah, it looks amazing. So where can people find your book to learn more?
Yeah, so you can buy Fuck Like a Goddess on Amazon, IndieBound, Barnes and Noble, and with Sounds True, the publisher. And if you like it, please leave an Amazon review. I really appreciate that, so that hopefully the book gods will allow me to write another book.
Mm, yeah. Well, I love all of the different formats that you are sharing your message. I watched a beautiful piece, a spoken word piece on your Instagram, and I know that you're writing, newsletters. So if people want to continue exploring your artistry and your beautiful
Mm.
words and your mind and everything, where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad that you watched that. I really love writing so much and speaking, and I have a Gemini North Node in the 12th house, which is in the house of healing and mysticism. The North Node is karmic destiny in astrology. So it's like karmic destinies to communicate and write and speak and share about mysticism. So I'm like, yes, great.
That's me.
Um, so you can find me on Instagram at Alexandra Roxo, and on my Instagram there's like a link tree, and you can join my newsletter. And I send, I'm really upping the ante in 2021 to try to send newsletters that have like deep articles a few times a month, and then some ritual playlists, poetry, sort of representing the more linear thinking part of us that wants like self-help, like spiritual support, and then the feminine, more numinous, moonlit, less linear part that needs to read a poem and fucking do a ritual and not know what's coming next and not figure it out, And so I want to tease women gently into coming into that space of less knowing and more being, and less doing and more being. And you can also just get that on my website, alexandraroxo.com. And I work with women one-on-one in coaching and mentorship, really helping women to come into their embodiment. A lot of times women who have been like super badass, got a lot of great work done, but then when it comes to their body and their sensuality and like their feminine spirituality, they are at a loss. They've hardened a bit. And I have went through that journey, and I love supporting women and kind of coming home to their sensuality, their sexuality, their erotic selves, their spiritual selves, and seeing where all of that is really one. It's all connected. So that's the kind of work that I do in coaching and mentorship with women.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that your background, that you come from this, more acting and writing and being an artist and being able to use all of that, and now being a mentor and a guide. And it's just really beautiful. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. And I know that any woman who is in space and gets to experience you is going to learn something really powerful. So thank you. Thank you for sharing with
Oh,
us
that's
here.
so sweet.
Yeah. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for all the work that you're doing in the world. And I know it takes courage to show up time and time again. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and seeing me.
Yes. Thank you for being here. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you soon.